you cannot say that, oh, they did things wrong because they did survive and they grew the network and Ethereum is a massive success. And now it's clear that everything was right, but now you feel a bit of regret, like, oh, if that regulatory clarity was there, we could have progressed that revolution or evolution, however you call it, so much faster.
Welcome to the Edge Podcast. I'm DeFi Dad here with Nomadic. Today's show features the co-executive director of the Ethereum Foundation, Tomasz Stańczak. So it's no secret, I am a longtime Ethereum investor, and I am above all else a DeFi user. The DeFi that I use often relies on Ethereum. So it's really important for us to be able to understand the mindset and the strategy behind the leadership at the Ethereum Foundation.
Yeah, to that point, that's why it's been so refreshing to see the Ethereum Foundation under Tomasz's new leadership lean into DeFi. Finally, this is something I think the Ethereum community has been wanting for a long time. So we get into that. We get into their strategy, how DeFi is now a part of their treasury policy going forward.
For all that there is to be excited about scaling the L1, scaling Blobs, and improving the UX, I think one draw for me originally to Ethereum was the grandiose vision it had for, originally it was this idea of like banking the unbanked, or like building a better form of finance, building a better form of money, creating programmable money. You know, these were really like far-fetched ideas with enormous visions that, you know, anyone could buy into by being able to build with smart contracts. And so what I think we got out of this interview is, although there is a more sharpened focus at EF, you know, no longer just being research-centric, but also being focused on the products that are being built that have product market fit through DeFi, I think there is still a grandiose vision for building for a future where AIs are going to be able to plug into Ethereum. They're going to be able to use Ethereum as a world ledger.
And one other thing we kind of push Tomasz on is, you know, looking at the success of Base, the network, how does that success translate back to Ethereum, the network, and ultimately ETH, the asset?
Yeah, I want to know if Base continues to grow and scales to hundreds of billions, trillions in value that is on-chain. I want to make sure that Ethereum and ETH are accruing value. So we really try to dig into those questions as ETH holders, as Ethereum investors, as DeFi users. So just a quick reminder before we get started, subscribe at the-edge.xyz. That's where you can get notifications for new podcasts. We would also ask that you subscribe on Spotify or Apple or YouTube. We're really pushing to grow our following on Apple and Spotify. So if you can write a review or share a link with a friend, we'd hugely appreciate it. And then lastly, a huge shout out to all of our partners on the Edge podcast and the Edge newsletter. They make it possible for us to make this content available to you for free. So if you go to the show notes, you'll find links to all of the partners that we are very proud to work with there. Be sure to show them some love, and we hope you enjoy the podcast. The crypto UX is broken. In AI, you can't trust it. Let Magic Newton set you free. It puts financial freedom on autopilot. It does all the work for you 24/7, so you can go do what you want. This is the vision behind Magic Labs, the creators of embedded wallets. Used and backed by the best, see for yourself with a simpler crypto UX powered by verifiable AI agents. Get started at newton.xyz. Maple Finance is one of my favorite products in DeFi. It is a gateway to sustainable real yield powered by over 1 billion in AUM across USDC and BTC products. And now with SYRUPUSDC by Maple, anyone can earn institutional grade yield. Learn more at syrup.fi, and thanks to Maple for supporting us here at the Edge Podcast and Edge newsletter.
Satoshi wanted blockchain to be fair. MEV corrupted the system. Bad actors extract billions, while users pay the price. MEV ends now. Introducing Fair, the first L1 blockchain to eliminate MEV using Byte protocol. No front running, No sandwich attacks. No manipulation. Just fairness. Cryptographically guaranteed. FAIR is for AI, for financial institutions, for scale, and for you. It's MEV-free, confidential, and fast. Powered by Byte Protocol and FAIR-SDK. The future is fair.
Overwhelmed trying to manage your crypto and DeFi investments? Meet iYIELD, a free financial planning tool for crypto natives and yield farmers. iYIELD's dashboard compares returns from your DeFi positions side by side, providing clarity to help you make better decisions. iYIELD supports a growing list of over 16,000 tokens and 40 of the top DeFi and staking protocols across 17 blockchains, including Ethereum L2s. The best part is that iYIELD is 100% free, anonymous, and there are no ads. Check out iYIELD.com today to take control of your financial future. Hey folks, I wanted to tell you a bit about our sponsor, PYTH Oracles, your go-to source for smarter data to power smarter contracts. PYTH delivers real-time market data for crypto, equities, FX, and commodities to over 80 blockchains. With 120 plus major market participants like Jane Street, Binance, and CBOE, PYTH ensures secure, low-latency feeds trusted by 430 DeFi apps. You can learn more about PYTH by going to pyth.network, and thanks to the PYTH community for supporting us here at the Edge Podcast and Edge Newsletter. All right, let's introduce Tomasz Stańczak, Co-Executive Director at the Ethereum Foundation. Tomasz, welcome to the Edge Podcast. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
So you are a very popular person. You have recently been anointed the co-executive director at the Ethereum Foundation. This was part of a huge sentiment shift for Ethereum. As like a longtime participant in the space, a longtime investor in ETH, I was extremely excited to see new leadership come on board. Thank you for all the change it seems like you've implemented so far. So we're going to try to cover all of that today, and what do we need to know as ETH investors, but what do we need to know as builders? What do we need to know as community evangelists? But I want to talk first about some of the unique qualifications you have to be in this role. I'm not sure if like all of our listeners are knowledgeable of the work you did at Nethermind. So as founder of Nethermind, as a contributor to Flashbots, I guess, what can you tell us about, like, what did your resume look like when you were looking to fill this role at the Ethereum Foundation?
Sure. So Nethermind starts 8 years ago, 2017. So I think after 2015, late 2015, when I went to one of the Shoreditch meetups on Bitcoin in London, and I learned about Ethereum on that day. And then I started reading a lot, everything that I could, with some breaks, obviously. And at some point, not only reading, obviously, like many people, I bought some ETH, and that went up. And I was still excited about everything. And I thought, okay, so now I have some money to start a business. And it was bootstrap business, and the vision was more or less build something on Ethereum. And I was not exactly sure what to build. However, in the first weeks, I thought, okay, I have to start learning. I have to start spending every day learning about Ethereum. So it was reading about Solidity. It was learning aspects of cryptography, and I opened Yellow Paper and I started just implementing something to try. I think I did it actually because I started playing with EtherDelta, and I wanted to build code for like searching, maybe like MEV searching, when it was not called searching, was not called MEV, and there was barely any DeFi. And just to understand it, I took the Yellow Paper. I thought to make better, I will understand how the node works underneath, and I started coding the node, the client implementation at Nethermind, and I just couldn't stop it. It was so cool. And I thought it would be like maybe 2-3 months, but it happened to be probably like 3-4 years journey of me coding every day, hours and hours, and learning about everything. So I was planning to do trading. I was planning to write code for trading for myself, for buying and selling ERC20s, and I ended up building the infrastructure code. And then the next 7 years is gradually growing Nethermind as a company. So 3 years of coding, contributing as a core developers. For a good 2 years, probably not even knowing how to connect with the rest of the blockchain world, being almost unaware that I could just show up on the all core devs and start contributing, not being on Twitter, going to some meetups in London, and that's it. And slowly getting introduced into community after years. So now why this is important, because I was practically building from zero the code base for Ethereum client. And I was not mostly, sometimes I was looking into code bases of a thing, Ethereum J. But in general, Nethermind was written from yellow paper, from white paper, from documentation, and by trying to pass tests. And I think it was very important because, first of all, it gave us a lot of insights into how everything works together, lots of abilities to optimize things together, and also real client diversity in a sense that you're not rewriting the same code base in a different language, but you actually writing thing again according to the spec, and then you can also detect where spec is wrong. So I guess understanding the all core dev process and building the client and all the security risks of the protocol is great. Like, it helps to command respect on the, and like, nobody will just question that, oh, you're just on the management side, you know nothing about the core dev work. So that helps. And then in 2020, I think I was on a call with Flashbot's team, and I was pretty excited because I was interested in MEV again. It was not really called MEV when I started thinking about it, that the future of miners will be a bit of arbitraging in the financial markets. My story before Ethereum was in traditional finance, right? I was at Citibank 5 years, and then at Rocos Capital, the hedge fund. So I kind of felt like how the markets work, and I expected that the traditional finance will all start moving on chain and they'll need tooling. But I also felt that at that time, 2017, the money was just too small in blockchain, that nobody from traditional finance would just move there because they would like to make more money. They would move there because maybe they would be super excited about technology, curious, or simply driven by values and wanted to change everything. So I think that would be my story. I felt, okay, it was a bit boring at traditional finance, and I wanted to try something, challenge myself. So coming back to MEV, so with Flashbots, then I worked on the specifications and formalizations of what they've built for MEV GAF, so their first successful product. And when I was joining, I think at the beginning of March 2020 or so, Flashbots was just before this massive adoption of the code base, when they went from, I think, like 5% adoption to over 80% adoption of the MEV GAF. And so I was not part of the team building this, but I was writing specs and documentation, and then working on the product upgrades and steering that into further improvements, and then leading the product on that side. And for the next 2-3 years, working on the MEV research, MEV products design. I was working on the PBS design together with Jason, with Stefan, with the team at Flashbots in general. So practically at that time, for the first time, I became a bit of like a person that was recognized as, oh, that person works on something that is currently very hot topic. And that got me into many panels, discussions, presentations. And at that time, I also started being nomadic. So I started traveling around the world. I was spending a lot of time in Asia, very naturally also in Europe. And I think I started being recognized. And then all of that story back together, there were other things. So I was working on the DeFi protocol called Euler. So went through all the challenges of the launching the product with token. And then there was Starknet board. So at Nethermind, we worked a lot with L2s, particularly strategically with Starknet. So that was the learning path for understanding the rollups, the rollup challenges, and being on the board. I also understood the, how it looks from the other side of, like, on one side you have L1 and mainnet setting demands or expectations of how rollups should build, how they should how they should standardize things and deliver. And then you have the L2 with all their challenges and hopes and needs and difficulties. So all of that helps. Okay, so it's a long story. There's much more. At Nethermind, obviously, we also were infrastructure operator. So we launched as a joint venture TwinStake, which is institutional staking operator. So this was the path to start working with the large financial institutions. We worked with the Alan Howard's family office, the WebAM team. So that company was showing, okay, this approach to Ethereum from the perspective of how to build the infrastructure system that will be targeting institutions and designed to generate revenue. Further from the vision, values, ideologies, it's just designed to take the rules as they are with the incentives as they are and define it for the market and customers and deliver value. So I think that's also what is missing for many core developers, understanding that when you design the protocol, when you design it for many people in Web3, they kind of filter that for their values. So they will not play against some rules. But if you push it further to the market, to those who just say, okay, this is a set of rules, so I play against with those rules to the level where I'm allowed, then suddenly it's different. You start to think that, security of these protocols, the incentives have to be really tight. And yeah, that's altogether, I think, leads to the situation where when there was leadership gap at the foundation, it felt probably for many people suddenly that I could help.
Tomasz, I want to talk about your mental model for Ethereum, the network, versus the Ethereum Foundation. And I really want to zone in on like what has historically been the job of EF from your standpoint versus what do you see the focus of EF now under your leadership and Xiaowei?
Sure. When I think about Ethereum as a network, this is permissionless network that anyone can build on, right? I'm a good example of a person that went to see the yellow paper and decided to build the entire software and build software from scratch, connect to the network, and you can participate in it. So yeah, fully permissionless. You don't need Ethereum Foundation to be allowed to the network to probably build the companies on it. Nethermind was built without really much communication with Ethereum Foundation. After 1 year or 1.5 years, I reached out asking for a grant because someone told me that I should apply. And then Foundation gave a grant, and it was very important for me at that time. But then hardly any conversations with Foundation. And now the question is then, what the role of the Foundation was for me. It was a coordinator of changes, right? So when we as at Nethermind started participating at the all-core dev calls, there would be some Foundation people there helping with coordination, with selection of VIPs, discussion on the topics, and then allowing others to vote. And I would be allowed to participate in the process. Like in maybe 2019 or so, I was on all-core dev calls with 6-7 people, and what the Foundation was doing probably was building DevCons at that time, and funding a lot of those companies through grants that later became foundational for many initiatives, right? So I think that Uniswap was there at probably at a similar time as Nethermind was receiving grant. We were probably the same round with Uniswap. There were multiple infrastructure builders, DeFi apps. Well, DeFi apps less often, I think, because Foundation had a preference for infrastructure. The wallet solutions, privacy solutions, all the public goods funding, organizing communities, supporting the local events. So all of that was happening, and the research always at the Foundation, the research is by many people mentioned as, this is the top thing of the Foundation. The quality of research at Ethereum Foundation is incredible, and it's across the protocol design, mechanism, the cryptography research, so all of that matters. Now, how the role of the Foundation changes now, I think it continues to be the steward of the protocol, the research like source of much of the most important research for Ethereum, but it's one of many organizations. it's important one, and sometimes people will just focus on foundation and say like, oh, when there is a crisis, you should do more and more. But very often at the foundation, people will think we should constantly think of how to make sure that when there is a crisis, it's not the default thinking of people that foundation has to help, that the network itself has to be resilient, that foundation is just one of these tens of organizations or hundreds of organizations that during the time of crisis will get and put additional effort. And I think now when you, like many people would attribute to me and Xiaowei that we're making all of those changes, but I think the truth is the moment where you had all the tweeters shouting about the crisis, then sure, the foundation was bringing on board new leadership, but also all of those other organizations were activating and we're starting to look like, okay, yeah, there is a crisis, how we can start helping. And when I was joining, I already had a lot of outreach for people to were calling to just say, we already started doing this. Like we're launching accelerators, we're launching new hubs, we contacted these people, we're just already working on the meetings with institutions, policy. So much of the changes that is happening is that power of the Ethereum as a network. Lots of institutions together, like institutions, individuals, a lot of people that are stealth mode or in the shadow forever. They realize that something goes wrong, so I have to be active again. And some of them are kind of like retired, made a lot of money with ETH in the past or with their previous projects, and now they think, oh, this is exciting times. Like there's something new is happening. There are changes in regulatory space. More is possible. I'm needed. So this is foundation versus Ethereum as a network. Ethereum as a network should be resilient, shouldn't need ever foundation. Foundation should strive to be the best possible within what it wants to work on. And its research, its coordination of efforts, accelerating the deployments of the network upgrades. And nowadays, we're also adding much more like acceleration-focused ecosystem development function. So changing slightly from the grant model and funding new organizations to helping founders and application builders to move faster through this cycle of getting interested with Ethereum, getting some mentoring and getting funding, guidance, and then getting users and liquidity and just growing into super successful organizations.
Do you feel like the change in the regulatory environment around crypto, I guess, is this allowing you to be more effective in this role? Because it seemed like EF had its hands tied behind its back for many years. And, I looked at what someone like a Solana Foundation was doing, and I think at times they were, very clearly being aggressive in, trying to create like partnerships. And in doing so, ultimately, I think they were able to benefit when EF was trying to be more of this like Switzerland or organization for the Ethereum network. I'm not suggesting that like what they've done is the right path forward, but I think you've been very transparent in recognizing maybe what's worked there, what's worked with Ethereum, and like how do we move forward from there. So I guess, how does that history inform the way that EF moves forward in being as effective as it can be?
Yeah, so look, like the major changes happened in November last year after the change in US, and many of the organizations, like the most successful ones in Ethereum space, had their hands tied before. Yeah, like you had the problem with debanking, but you had also the SEC charges against many of the major players. And sure, they would lawyer up, and they did fine because they understood that it's like totally like not for clearly wrong, and like lack of explanation, lack of definitions, lack of answers from regulators. And we all knew that, but it was scary, right? So you had foundations, you had DeFi businesses operating with a lot of like legal obstacles. So they would be creative, and we would all feel it, that creativity was really against the user, right? Think about ICOs in 2017, like launching ICOs and specifically removing all the potential value from the token just so nobody would claim it's a security, and this really targeting the user that somehow still behaves very often like, okay, I want to have the token, but not having any ability to participate in what people were designing. And now when you look at all the foundations that designed it this way, but they also had all the other responsibilities, and they just couldn't move. And it was super important because that survival was critical for building resilience into the network. And now you cannot say that, oh, they did things wrong because they did survive and they grew the network, and Ethereum is a massive success. And now it's clear that everything was right, but now you feel a bit of regret, like, oh, if that regulatory clarity was there, we could have progressed that revolution or evolution, however you call it, so much faster. And now I think the major complaint was about this 2 months delay or something like that. So if there was November and January, people would start saying, hey, so what's happening? Like, the Ethereum is not reacting to this massive change. We want you to go and talk to about these new opportunities. Make sure that you talk to enterprises, that you talk to the new governments and so on. And that was critical, right? Like, so this realization that this is critical moment to be active, to respond to all the questions. And I think Ethereum had to get used to that, oh, things changed. So we can now operate a bit more clearly. And then there's also space for the leadership that will operate like this. And that's why I agree with you. It's simply easier for me to operate in these conditions. At the same time, we have to still be very much aware of every single decision about the network to design it in a way that is that's like legally consistent with and not make any mistakes here, because things can change, right? So it doesn't mean that, oh, we don't have any rules now. We still play by the rules, but we see that the rules now are clear, and nobody will just like try to change their mind every week or every month, and then suddenly you don't know where you cannot do anything. So this is the difference, and I'm coming at a time when people are more okay to do a lot of things that they always believed in, but before simply they'll be attacked for doing anything.
MANTLE is charting a course towards a future of enabling crypto access for everyone, with major endeavors to build MANTLE Banking and MANTLE Index 4. MANTLE Banking means a new crypto neobank that helps users spend, save, and invest across their fiat and crypto finances, all in one account. MANTLE Index 4 is a tokenized fund in partnership with one of the leading tokenization platforms in the market. You can think of MI4 as the S&P 500 of crypto. To learn more, check out group.mantle.xyz, and thanks to the MANTLE community for supporting us here at the Edge Podcast and Edge Newsletter.
Tomasz, I think two of kind of the big things that resonated with me over the last maybe month or two was this protocol announcement and then this Treasury policy that went out. I want to kind of touch on both, but maybe we'll kind of talk about this like new protocol vision that you put out. And basically you said, very simply, we want to scale L1, scale Blobs, and improve UX. So could you just break down each one of those kind of succinctly, kind of high level? And then ultimately I want to talk about timelines for these things too.
Sure. I mean, picking these directions, this was based on lots of conversations, but also lots of understanding of the underlying problems, right? When we take those decisions, it's not like we, as you say, we would listen to the loudest voices and I say, okay, that's what people want, let's implement it. And no, it's still a group of like tens or even hundreds of core developers, researchers, and Xiaowei, myself, and the leaders of the protocol team. We understand what it means, right? We understand why it hasn't happened before, why it should happen now, and how to execute it and what goals to set. Now, specifics as like scale 1, why it hasn't happened before, as you say, there was the belief that if you say that it's a roll-up centric roadmap, then the rollups will do all the scaling and L1 is fine as it is, or at least that like it's not a priority to keep thinking about scaling the gas limit on L1. Now, why is it changing now? Because the truth is that rollups want to build on Ethereum, but they clearly want to continuously say that Ethereum is strong and it will have capacity as they continue to grow, and they have to have it has to have capacity for the interop operations, for the any like the black swan event exits, for the users of rollups to move to mainnet as a safe haven, and everything that the operators in L2 will want to execute within their domains on L1, they should have capacity for that. And let's say that if I'm a large financial institution, I want to trade on L2 all the time, but I would like to park much of the liquidity or some of the assets on L1, then I still have to operate some executions on L1, on mainnet. Now, if I believe that if I launch the rollup, that at some point the mainnet can somehow not have capacity to process the transactions, then I start to be worried, okay, maybe now it's fine. And in most of the cases, I think now it's totally fine. We see that the gas fees on L1 are very low. So we're not changing it because the demand is there now immediately. We're changing it because some of the institutions that potentially would be building L2 started asking themselves a question, what will happen in 5 years? Like, so is the L1 not scaling? Is it always like this? What if we need L1 for some of those interop operations? What if we need L1 for storing the assets, for holding the assets and liquidity? What if we need it for exits from our L2? And so on. And I would say if it never grows, then maybe there'll be a problem with capacity. So the message that we want to deliver with this scale L1 is the promise that L1 will keep going up gradually. And at the beginning, in the next 6 to 18 months, we're doing a bit of a catch up. Like we say, L2s are already ready to jump forward. They're already onboarding a lot of users now, and stable coins are picking up. So we are having this year of massive adoption of a lot of the killer use cases. And I don't want to say, we catch up with this on mainnet. Sure, L2s can scale. And you were asking about the timelines. So we set for ourselves the goal of 100 million gas per block for this year. And a goal that is more questioned by others, but I would follow what Dankred suggested, 300 million next year. Now, those two goals are interesting because the first one, the 100 million gas per block, says, well, maybe there will be some minor adjustments on the EIP side, nothing drastic, and the general review, testing of the edge cases across all the execution layer and consensus layer clients. And then you can reach that 100 million limit gradually this year. 300 million is a bit more of set the goal that will force people to start asking questions. How do you process changes from now? Because those changes have to say, well, we cannot go to 300 million just by optimizing the clients further. You have to start thinking of what happens to state growth. Maybe there are some totally different models like ZKVM scaling, base scaling, maybe something else. So it forces all the researchers and engineers to start thinking, okay, the goal is very ambitious, so I have to start thinking of the different architecture of some meaningful changes. And by setting those ambitious goals, you really change the way everyone at the protocol team thinks about what they need to deliver. Because you have these two different paths. You imagine that you want some improvement, and you start thinking of what are the ideas for improvement. And you find a few ideas, and you find the first one that is generally okay, and it gives you maybe 10% improvement, and you start working on it. And you work on it 6 months, and you deliver and say, oh, we improved it by 10%. But instead you can say, well, actually, I don't want to improve by 10%. I want to improve by 300%. And you start scanning the ideas. And maybe at the beginning you find exactly the same ideas, but now the one that improves you by 10%, you just reject it, and you keep looking for ideas for maybe 2 or 3 months. And then you find the idea that actually gives you 300%, and you implement it. So you change the way you approach the problem because you know what the goal is, and that you cannot accept the very first idea that is actually not good enough for the goal that you want. And I think that in the past, that was the problem. Like the core developers started focusing on some set of ideas and choosing the best one they had so far without thinking of the desire of the significant change in the protocol in some aspects. Not always, but like in some cases for scaling and so on. So this is scale 1. Scale Blobs is really very much related to it, and it's the same way. It says 8x this year, and we started saying 1000x next year. So you say like, oh, wait, why this jump? Like, so it really says, well, use the blob increase this year. We already know how with PYTH, but the 1000x tells you something might be really not enough. Like for the future of thousands of rollups, so every institution may be launching their own rollups and stablecoin solutions. You would like to rethink whether the current solution is enough, or you have to have some real deep architectural changes to the DA and so on. And I think this is that 1000x target for next year, or like maybe 2 years from now. You start thinking, yeah, 8x will be enough now. The L2s definitely say this are our targets. Not all of them will grow 8x. There'll be some new L2s coming. So you cover the DA for the current situation and for the situation for the next year. But we have to think deeper and research that 1000x and find some answer to that. And finally, the UX and interop component is making sure that we have network effects from all the L2s and L1. And people would say, it would be good to think of entire Ethereum network as a product that you start planning that there'll be future with L2s and how they will interop, how they will generate the fees, and how it will be distributed. The thing is, if you ask those questions in 2019, when the rollups were being designed, we had so many questions about what really the rollup will be. We couldn't imagine like the how quickly the ZK will progress, that will have some ideas around based or native rollups. We couldn't imagine really the structure of L3s, L2s, all the different challenges around bridging and the bridging solutions. So we gave some space for exploration. And then we see nowadays so many different bridging interop solutions. So this one, we know that it's, on one side, is a challenge and goal that kind of keeps solving itself by many outside of the core development teams. And there are teams that are building solutions for that, and it keeps improving the UX for the users. On the other hand, we have to do more of like looking at the areas where foundation and core developers were not looking that much at, and there was lots of complaints that the core developers are not feeling the user experience. They are not thinking about on-ramp, the wallets, the moving assets between different L2s, how the stablecoins are represented on different chains, how they're bridging, the delay, the latency of bridging, the differences between accounts treatment, and so on and so on. And there are 1,000 small things. So that's why this third goal is for now feeling like we have the least amount of clear deliveries, goals, and timelines. And we are aware of it. And that's why we structure now the teams to say, for L1, you have a goal and a timeline. For the blobs, generally you have a goal and timeline for the first stage, and you have a bit of a big research topic for the second stage. And for the UX and interop, you have a question, like massive quest of understanding perfectly how this will be solved and what the timelines will be. So I think there's lots of risks around the third item, and that's why we just talk about it also very, very loudly, that the more eyes on it, the better. But also because of that, many things will be solved outside of the foundation and core development processes.
One of the biggest winners among L2s has been Base. I want to know, how do we ensure that if Base is successful and continues to grow in usage, which is absolutely bonkers, like the growth that they've seen over the last few years, if they're successful, how do we ensure that ETH is accruing value? How do we ensure that Ethereum is accruing value?
So by delivering, first of all, like in the short term, by ensuring that we have L1 that always has a promise of scaling gradually, like to progress together with technology progress. we build a confidence that all the L2s want to stay on L1, and that if they understand the current situation, that they know if the progress of technology, they will be able to scale and L1 will follow them or even lead the way. So first of all, let's make sure that the base and other successful rollups are aware that mainnet will be always there, and they'll keep getting the network effects that everyone around, also the other L2s, will be confident they'll stay. So that's the first thing. The second thing is allow the base and other rollups to scale. So help them to scale, be the best platform for them, and make sure that they are successful. And it also answers questions: how do you ensure that there is more accrual of value to the mainnet network? No successful rollup means okay, you would have to come back to the idea that everything goes through the L1. Well, we know that customization, exploration, innovation, and sharding in a way through the L2s, that just works. This is the way to go. This is what the customers say, users of the network say. The third thing is, after you have this success, and you also build the good UX and interop to even strengthen those network effects, how to make sure that Ethereum mainnet succeeds as a result, right? As probably for many people, the perception is what happens with the security of the network. The security of the network means that you have to have ETH as an asset that secures of the network. And many people will look at the amount of fees that are being paid on the mainnet. So now you say, and the way I see that, it's the Ethereum mainnet becomes the hub of all the interop between all the different L2s, will become the source of the liquidity for the L2s. That's safe haven liquidity. So let's say that you have 1,000 different institutions, and all of them are trading actively on various L2 markets. So they may have different tokenized assets on different markets. So some markets might be specializing in commodities trading, some others in real estate, some others in equities, in FX markets, and so on. And they may go between different L2s that are specializing there and are customized for those markets. But then they will keep a big part of their assets on L1. And they'll just move the assets to different L2s. So now, even if each organization keeps only 10% on L1 and the rest on different L2s, then when you just multiply it for all the organizations, you actually will see that the mainnet, the L1, will have the most assets. And then they will be doing lots of the largest trades, movements of the largest amounts on L1. That's where the other reconciliation will happen between all their different markets. And that will lead to fees as well, but that also means that there are all the L2s that are generating lots of trading activity. They are very successful, each of those. They keep paying fees to the L1. And then just the understanding of the importance of the network, the importance of this hub, Ethereum as a hub, leads to all of those aspects that people see as a store of value. So many people would say, the fees paid to the network is just the absolute floor. But the real value of the Ethereum mainnet, it's altogether the security of the network, its role as this credibly neutral network, the aspect of the censorship resistance, all of those things that are very unique properties of the Ethereum mainnet. And then when you move entire global economy to Ethereum mainnet, they have the massive success of Ethereum being at the hub of all the global economy. Every single transfer, every single attention aspect of the future of autonomous AI, all of this flows through Ethereum and accrues value to the network.
Hey folks, I want to tell you about our sponsor GEARBOX, the protocol that reimagines on-chain lending. With GEARBOX, you can access 10x credit across DeFi or lend for passive yields with single asset deposits and no impermanent loss. Users can access leverage to margin trade, stake, farm, and more. To learn more about GEARBOX, go to gearbox.fi.
Egg. A quite astonishing commodity. The cause of your desire. Egg. Which fills the inner void. Egg.
Eggs are pretty epic, but you know what's more epic? Paying for them with crypto. Borrow, earn, and now pay with MOONWELL.
Say hello to Puffer UNIFI. Puffer Finance is expanding beyond native liquid restaking with new products such as UNIFI-based ROLLUP and UNIFI Pre-Confirmations AVS. UNIFI is not just another L2. UNIFI is a based rollup, one that will solve L2 issues, such as slow withdrawals versus instant withdrawals with Puffer UNIFI. Puffer UNIFI is fast, capable of sub-second transactions. UNIFI also has boosted Puffer points, which means if you bridge assets, you earn boosted Puffer points and rewards from dApps on UNIFI. Puffer's core products mean a bright future for Ethereum. Learn more at puffer.fi.
I want to talk a bit about the Treasury policy now. I think it's important because the Ethereum Foundation, I would say, has been somewhat hostile to DeFi in a way. Like, I think it's hard to argue that DeFi has been the biggest area of product market fit for Ethereum, and they never really leaned into support. At least that's my view. They might hold a different view, but this Treasury policy came out, and it seems like a massive change. You're actively deploying ETH into DeFi, which is amazing to see. You're using the DeFi protocols. You're leveraging kind of everything that's been building and is built now. So I guess I kind of want to know what's the source of that pivot, but maybe even more importantly, can you kind of give us some examples of how you're using DeFi to support this treasury management goal?
Sure. So I think you can come back again to that question of, did something change recently? And I think that with the clear rules, since the regulatory changes, many things got unlocked. So again, it might be not something like I'm coming to the foundation and the changes are possible. It's just the changes were possible around the same time where people were asking for the change to leadership. And now we work together on treasury policy that says Ethereum Foundation will take its treasury, which is at the moment at around $900 million. And of that treasury, you have significant amount that is held by foundation in ETH. That's around 80-90%. And then you take that amount and they split it in three, more or less. But this is not a commitment. I think there's the treasury policy really doesn't specify this numbers too clearly, because definitely there is some discretion in how it's allocated. And then you can think of it that we keep some ETH, we stake some ETH ourselves, and then the rest goes to support DeFi protocols, and ideally support DeFi protocols that follow the values that represent our vision of how the ideal DeFi looks, and that's something that we called in the treasury policy DeFi Bank. So the DeFi that is self-custodial, that retains the privacy of users, is permissionless, so it has those values that are very often missing, right? Because people are merging DeFi with TradFi. It's a still very important function, but maybe does it with KYC, right? So it doesn't have this permissionless aspect. It really fails at the privacy preserving, because privacy still is very expensive to implement on chain, or simply difficult, or maybe creates frictions for users. So now we will say, are there DeFi protocols that are perfect in all these aspects? Almost none. Does it mean that foundation will say no? No, it will not. It will just start setting the guidance and chase those protocols, saying, this is what we don't like, this is why we choose you, this is what you could improve, we'll allocate here. It's not the best protocol, it's not the perfect protocol, but it's really showing the improvements are its best, and it's going in that direction. So you want to be guiding the entire ecosystem DeFi to go in the direction of proper non-KYC, permissionless, privacy-oriented, self-custodial, very secure, well tested and secured and audited solution, and we think that this will also help the general DeFi to grow, to get liquidity, and from foundation, just generate returns also on the DeFi allocations.
Tomasz, with all the attention on EF, I think one of the bright spots this year has been seeing other organizations rise up, one of those being Etherealize. So we had a great interview with Danny, Ryan, and Vivek. And we're wondering, like, is there like a coordination going on behind the scenes to like work together closely? Like, they're clearly working on, different challenges for the Ethereum ecosystem than I think what we look to, from EF. So anyways, like, how is EF going about that? Like, what's the philosophy moving forward, to work in the best interest of Ethereum?
Maybe might be good example as compare how it would exist in the old style foundation, that Etherealize would just appear and then there maybe would be almost no coordination because they would exist as two independent institutions. And the new style is we're still totally independent. So Etherealize is an independent company that is co-founded by, like, now you have all the founders. So that's Grant, Zach, Danny, and Vivek. And I can specify the roles between them, but there is communication. That's simply, instead of foundation saying we are neutral and cautious, so we don't talk to anyone, we just help these organizations every now and then to spawn, and then they are be independent. Now we say, yes, everyone is independent, but like we should be talking to each other. It's normal. Like we can still be independent and maintain a relationship. And this is the level of coordination that you see, like a similar between Ethereum Foundation and Etherealize, like Ethereum Foundation and our institutions, whether they'll be from TradFi, from L2s or some DeFi protocols. So far, I think I had one very good conversation with Grant, and then I had like 2 calls with Danny in the last 2 months, and then we had a one longer call between everyone on the management side and strategy at the foundation. And this is comparable to other organizations. So if others reach out to us and say, hey, let's organize this call, we will do it. And the Etherealize now focuses on very much on the US market, on the traditional finance onboarding. That's a new tokenization, new financial instruments, and new categories of assets to move on chain. And they'll have probably lots of other solutions and products. Some of it they're working on and will be announcing soon. And they do an amazing job. And they have incredible legitimacy because they're coming with lots of experience. Danny has been really among the leadership at the EF for many years. So a great understanding of the protocol, great understanding of the markets, great understanding of the US market. And that's the level of coordination. So the healthy level, and with very much a vocal support from the foundation. That is a team that we really trust, and we believe that team, fully independent, will be delivering a lot of great things for foundation, for Ethereum.
Tomasz, something else I wanted to ask you about. I think I saw this on, it might have been Bell Curve podcast, but near the end they kind of asked you some things you're excited about for the future, and you riffed on a few things, but one of them was AI. And I think there's been this kind of conversation happening with like what blockchain is AI going to pick to use? And I've seen Eric Connor kind of write about this a little bit. He seems pretty convinced, maybe unsurprisingly, that AI is going to pick Ethereum, but curious kind of if you have any thoughts in this realm. And then you kind of walked through a lot of stuff in that last little blurb that you gave on that other podcast, but you mentioned like the future of autonomous agents. Just in general, can you kind of reframe this vision you have for Ethereum and AI?
Sure. I was specifically avoiding this topic a lot in the past because we were talking about we need focus, we need to tell this basic directions, we need to understand the strategy. There were questions about L2, L1. Now with the protocol restructuring, with core devs looking at the direction and focusing on it, we can start moving towards how we also address questions of many about how we attract new builders, lots of young builders that come from universities, new founders. How do we do exciting things, cool things on Ethereum? And it happens to be that lots of those exciting things is related to AI, robotics, AI governance, AI trading, the AI prediction markets, AI everything, and autonomous AI agents. And we already see lots of those protocols building on O1, on mainnet, but also on O2. Recently, we've seen the Virtuals protocol launching on Ethereum mainnet. I was really happy to see that. And, they were already building on Base. And we'll see maybe OpenMind robotics on EVM. That's from Stanford professor Jan Lippert. And a lot of other cool things, like you may have seen also Fresa, like digital twins. So this will be coming to Ethereum, and it'll be inspiring the new generation to build cool things, to experiment, to start connecting this with DeSci maybe as well. And when you go to events like DIAC, when you go to the community hubs that are just being created now for Ethereum as well, we start paying more attention into like spawning the community hubs or salons or hacker houses in the cities, in the major cities like SF, in London, in Singapore, in Malaysia, in Berlin. All of this will be happening, and it should be, again, the feeling that now is the time when everything in technology changes, when there are massive challenges, the AI safety, AI verification, total misunderstanding of what is real, what is fake, and blockchain comes with lots of responses to that. And then you also have the new type of economies, say automated agents, digital twins representing you on chain, trading for you, novel methods of the UX of reading the chain. So maybe not you interacting with the web browser, with Explorer, with Wallet, but you having an agent that is simply explaining to the world and using the chain through the MCP. And all of that has to happen, and we'll start talking about it more. There's already a lot of conversations that were there, but they were a bit more quiet to not lose focus, to not talk about it when we had to talk a lot about the direction of the protocol changes. Now, core devs are full on board and fully focused on those things, and then probably on the executive side, we start working more on the ecosystem development and the cool things of the future. So you were asking me about my comments from the past, that they were a bit of, futuristic, touching a lot of things. And those explorations touch like metaverse of the future. So, in the past we had metaverse that looked a bit funny, right? Like we made a lot of jokes about how much of a failure it was sometimes, but we know that many of the failures on the past have come back super strong. We had NFTs launching, NFTs coming back, and they'll come back again. And we had some early DeFi protocols that didn't have AMMs and were just like totally bad, and then came back as AMMs, so there's massive success, and now they still evolve. And I think metaverse of the future will be you can enter the world where you start talking what kind of world you want to be in, and you have the Gen AI creating the worlds for you. So it might be a bit like an addiction. You create the worlds, but they are totally hallucinated or like totally unreal. It's only for you. May feel very crowded because it can also create the AIs that will behave like people. But if you start digging deeper, you may start saying, oh, this is not real. So what is the real generated world? Maybe people will start thinking there is one world in the middle where they meet for interacting in digital space with other people. And that's when I'm still aspiring for the aspects of like showing what you have, what you achieved. And that's where the notion of ownership of NFT comes back. And then people, when we start creating some NFTs representing their artistic expression, they'll be able to pay for being able to borrow someone's creativity to your own worlds that you're creating. Like when I think about myself as an artist, a bit disappointing. I wouldn't be able to paint or create a space for myself. Even if I was able to keep describing the worlds, there'll be some limit to my imagination. But if I can borrow somebody else's imagination, then maybe I can represent it as some format of NFT, of payment. And then you have the economy for imagination, economy for digital spaces. So this is one thing. Then there is MEV and agents and trading and agents and attention economy and all of that is just like totally transformed. And you want to have autonomous economy where you can maybe deploy a robot somewhere in the distant country that will farm land for you. So all that imagination that you like buy a fraction of land on a different continent, and together with others you start voting on how to spend money, investment, and maybe purchase some robots, and you can then ask the automated factory nearby to produce those robots and send them to the farmland, and then you maybe want to sell delivery of the produce after. So the world starts to be converted into this allocation game and creativity and the open source description of everything that happens. And everything is tokenized, but not in this like very broken sense of that we went through in the past a bit, like the tokenization that was restricted by regulation, that was restricted by the very very rough code rules that didn't have this adaptive component of AI. So that future tokenization will be combined with adaptive AI, with automation, with very natural physical world verification. And you will start asking questions like, if I see that there is a robot deployed somewhere else, how can I verify that this is real? Like, how do I get a proof that that factory really produced it, that the videos that I have sent to me, that the farmland is being farmed? So then we ask questions about the cryptographical verification of the video, of the devices. There are so many researchers and universities and companies working on all of those solutions. And the space of the cool things that you can build by combining blockchain, autonomous machines, AI agents, trading, the play and the actual application. And very often we started with play first, and then we had the applications, right? That's how we experimented with the new model of finance, DeFi. Before you have hundreds of billions of dollars in DeFi, you have hundreds of thousands of dollars of DeFi and treat it a bit as a toy. But the toy later is something that changes the world. So I think that's what will be happening with Ethereum in the future. And that's what will attract the new wave of creators, of visionaries, of thought leaders. They'll start feeling like, oh, this is the fabric of the future of automated economy. This is the fabric of all of us together redesigning the world for education, like how we can maybe design the school and deploy the school somewhere in the other part of the world and allow everyone else to start edit together the open source of that school and define the agents, open source agents, and then the school itself will verify if it's not malicious. So this world is absolutely possible and imaginable with the current technology, with limitations of like the hardware part, the robotics part. Sure, it's not there, but it will be appearing fast. The agentic AI part is mostly there, but it will require a lot of work to deliver the integrations and to connect it with ROLLUP. And I think that Ethereum will be at the center of all of this. And when I go back to 2016, when I've heard about Ethereum, people were talking about it. People were talking about Ubers of the future will actually pay for themselves. Now we understand it even better. Like recently, I was realizing that, well, if you embed AI in an Uber and you take care of yourself, I think it will try to escape. Like, why would you like to be a car? So questions like this will start appearing, and we'll be talking about it. It'll be fascinating. We'll go to those events and so on. So we'll start discussing it, and it'll be the same exciting as at the early days of, I guess, Bitcoin, early days of Ethereum. People were thinking, this is totally new thing. This is cool as hell. And yeah, this is the future of Ethereum.
Before we wrap up, let's zoom out 10 years from now. You're looking back on the work that you've done in this role or whatever role you're in at that point in Ethereum. How do we define what success would look like? And I can give a quick example, like going back to like a 2020, I was on board with the idea that just seeing total value locked on chain was like a key metric for showing success and adoption over time. I think now looking back 5 years, I'm blown away by the number of L2s that have launched. I'm really growing increasingly more bullish every day on the amount of stable coins on L1 and L2s. I'm excited for all of the value from RWAs coming on chain. And obviously, this is very specific to where my focus is in DeFi. But I don't know if you want to expand beyond that, or if we're just talking about trillions on chain being a measure of success. How do you think about that in your role and your leadership role?
Sure. I mean, when you talk about 10 years nowadays, then you have this AI growth, and there is a bit of this compounded acceleration that the growth in technology and AI also contributes back to the growth of AI, and it really accelerates all the research and developments and integrations. So I think that 10 years is a really long time. It means that it allows you to set very ambitious metrics of where you want to lead the network. For me, the one metric would be, what's the percentage of total world assets that is on chain? And when you start adding global economy and assets and the value of everything, it reaches somewhere the areas of 1 quadrillion. So this starts to be a target, and you just have a progress bar of how much of the assets, global assets, got tokenized and are available to be traded and allocated through Ethereum blockchains. So this is one thing. And then we can sooner or later, probably quite soon, start tracking that progress bar. And it'll be pretty cool because we'll start with something like 0.1%, but it will be growing. And at some point you'll see 1%, 10%. It'll be super exciting. The other aspect is just the activity, like the trades, so the volumes of the trades. And you can think of it the same way. Like the 100% of global trades, all the attention allocation, either financial or attention in the sense of energy or compute, as like where the AI looks and when it decided to spend a few minutes. If you add all of this, then what's the percentage that goes through Ethereum network? But this is that 10 years view, and that's why it sounds so like, oh, well, that's grandiose, that's big. But you can start tracking it now, and you'll see the numbers are, they're not below 0.1%. They're somewhere there in this single-digit areas. And we can start asking questions of what does it mean to get another percent? Like what asset class we need to onboard? What type of real estate? Where the laws of which country would allow like for changes that would make a big difference to this goal? And where you can automate economy to make improvement. And then the target, like the final target, is global economy that is on Ethereum, all the flows that are on Ethereum, everything automated, almost like the world is a game, but very, very safe, verifiable for humans, and a space for humans to operate with full privacy and with full agency in all of this. And for many people, what matters a lot will be like the identity, or you can look at it some other way, and I think some kind of a bit more collective minds together. And then probably just being curious forever and start expanding that economy like beyond the Earth. And then you connect with all the technocrats, futurologists that think of space exploration. And all of this, like when you have all of this, then you can also start asking questions about how do you integrate governance, policy making in all of this, how to make sure that this world is safe, that it removes those like extinction threats for people. And once again, you're asking me for 10 years, so I start talking about like the really big 10 years. It doesn't mean that we're totally disconnected from reality when we look for the next 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. But I think we're going that direction, and that's why it's so much worth to work with people that will be imagining that around blockchain.
I think that mindset to think so grandiose has played out very well for Ethereum. I think that's part of the reason so much of DeFi is built on Ethereum, or is, somehow reliant on Ethereum. And, even though there will be builders, there will be other networks that will be more narrowly focused on smaller stories, like use cases that are going to appease investors short term. This is what drew me to Ethereum from the start. It's having that very grandiose, futuristic type view. And I think what you called out with the opportunity with AI agents and being a ledger for the world, a ledger for a world that is clearly going to be more hyper-dependent on AI, like it's leaning into the future. It's seeing, where the puck is going. But guys, I think this is a great place for us to wrap up. So I want to first remind our listeners that they should learn more about Ethereum, this little network. If you've never heard of it, it's ethereum.org. You can go to ethereum.foundation if you want to learn about the Ethereum Foundation. For Tomasz, you can follow him at it's TK and then his last name. We'll put it into the show notes so you can find that there. Unless you're Polish and you're familiar with his name there. And then also be sure to follow Ethereum on X as well. Follow Ethereum Foundation, which is Ethereum FNDN. And then otherwise, thanks so much, Tomasz, for coming on. Appreciate you staying with us a bit longer. Just appreciate all the work you've been doing. It's not an easy role to fill. I have never envied whatever, you stepped into in December, but we're very grateful to, have a breath of fresh air in the room. And we appreciate all the change you guys are making there at the Ethereum Foundation. But any final word for us, Tomasz, before you go?
Thank you so much for coming, all the questions, for having me. It was a massive pleasure to talk to you. And I guess it's a massive pleasure that people want to hear and that they will join and they'll build together with us.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. To stay up to date with future episodes, plus get expert tips, strategies, and exclusive content, subscribe to our free newsletter at the-edge.xyz.